Good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Perry.
I'm your host, David. Tonight we're talking about Season 5, Episode 8, Things Past. But before we continue, you can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Twitter, and YouTube as The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. Can't believe I said Twitter. It's X or whatever.
Look, it's Twitter,
Anyway,
okay? We're of the
eh,
generation that it will forever
it
be
really
Twitter.
is.
That's
It
it.
really
It's Twitter.
is.
Sorry.
Ugh.
But that's okay. And as I say every single week, you should find us and follow us because we are awesome. And I think that if you enjoy Deep Space Nine, you should already be aware of our show because heck, it's one of the few shows that actually talks about Deep Space Nine anymore, and also talks about it in a rather positive context. I
Yeah.
will say that. Um, but yeah, again, find us, follow us anywhere you happen to do social medias, and of course, you can listen to us anywhere you happen to listen to podcasts. I do it on Spotify, so join us there. And if you have any questions or comments or concerns, please feel free to leave them somewhere, on our YouTube videos, Twitter, wherever, and we'll get to you as soon as we find out about it. But tonight, as David said, we are here to talk about things past. I think I always say it's some kind of episode, a great episode, interesting episode, pivotal episode, something along those lines. This one, I feel like the word I'm going to use for this one is, well, deep.
Mm,
Complex, very nice. Like it's a different way to do world building, and I find it really interesting. While it also gives us a lot about one of our main characters.
right.
So yeah, there's a lot that goes on in this one, and hopefully if you've watched it multiple times, you have found new things to enjoy about it. And if you watched it for the first time, hopefully there are a lot of things you can appreciate about it. And since David is the resident between us who has never seen this, I'm hoping he falls into that category, of course.
Right.
But before we get to all that, as always, like to check in. So, David, how has your week been?
Week's been good. Work's been better than it has been in past weeks, which is nice. Um, but of course, the big thing is to keep you guys updated. So, War and Peace, I'm about halfway through, a little more than halfway. And at this point, it's getting really enjoyable because, like, it basically the book feels like it's in two halves. The first half feels like prologue, or to put it more to make it make a little more sense, all of the stuff that happens in the first half of the book is set up for the second half, because the second half is Napoleon's invasion of Russia in 1812. I'm sorry, yeah, 1812. And it's just interesting because the book went from being a straight like novel, like straight up just fiction, it's historical fiction, but now in the second half of the book, you'll get chapters where Leo Tolstoy, the author, is like inputting his own thoughts into the story. Like he's commenting on history. Like he takes a break from like the fiction to like here's the historical context of what's happening, but like with my own commentary, which is actually really fascinating. He basically is very he thinks historians basically are a bunch of liars. Historians like they try and spin things in favor of the side of the historical argument that they like. So the Russian historians paint the Russians in a certain light, and the French historians paint Napoleon a certain way. But he's basically acting like he's giving you the true, realistic, authentic version of what's happening. Meanwhile, you have all these characters that he's put in historical situations, and they're what they're doing, which is just fun because I just literally read a biography of Napoleon, so I'm literally able to follow along with all of the historical context. Rewatching some videos I watched that I kept up with, like about the battles,
Hmm.
and then pulled the biography out, like read what the biography had to say about certain things, and it's just really fun. I feel like I actually have the knowledge and background to understand what's being talked about, which just makes my enjoyment of this really thick tome all that better. It feels like you need to have understood the history before you would get into the book, because he was writing to an audience that was about 50 years removed from the original storyline. He wrote it in the 1860s, and this was about again the 1810s. So about 50 years after the fact, which would make sense that people would have understood some of the historical context when he was writing the book. So yeah, it's been fun reading that. I still have, again, I'm only a little over halfway, so I still have another good week and a half of reading to do before I get onto anything else.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been fun too. You're in a new location for those who are watching.
Yeah, things have been coming along on that front. I have been slowly but surely moving my family to a larger space, and it's been a bit of a exhaustive process because I can really only do the move stuff on the weekends, of course, because I work, and it really doesn't leave me with a whole lot of time throughout the week
Right,
between having to work and my kid has school and everything else we've got to do throughout the week. So yeah, the weekends really become, and then really it's Saturday is the day that the majority of this gets done because I'm just so not wanting to, use both days of the weekend to do it.
right,
I would like a day for my, especially my daughter, having a day to just relax and just be,
right,
go to school all week and then you spend your whole weekend working and moving and boxing stuff and putting away other things and clearing stuff out and cleaning. That's terrible. No kid
right,
wants to do that. So I'm like, yeah, just give me one day and then we'll have another day where we just relax. We don't do anything.
right.
So today, in addition to moving and cleaning and everything else, we just kind of ran around the new town, and we were looking for things like, where's the local pharmacy? Where's our nearest grocery store? Where's our nearest gym for me? In which I now found out there's not a gym near me that does what I'm working on, what I've been training for.
Uh-huh.
So looks like I'm gonna have to travel a bit into Pflugerville in order to sign up to a gym to go there to be able to continue the workouts that I've been doing. Which hey, it's fine. I don't mind. It's not that far away.
Right,
I guess I just got a little spoiled because the gym I was going to was like right around the corner from me, so it's just like get up and kind of just do your cardio and jog there and
right.
go to the gym. Versus now, it's like now you're definitely gonna have to but that's fine. It's fine. So
Gotcha.
other than that, things are going pretty well. Like I said, work has been pretty consistent, so I'm not really worried about that. I am officially at the halfway point of the expanse, so
Nice.
we will be able to work on when we're going to schedule, whatever coming up. I know that obviously you're still reading a lot of different things,
Right.
so whenever you have time to, work through and get there, we can do that.
Great.
Also, on your point about the history of the various war battles and things like that you were looking at, I did also find several on YouTube. I had
Hmm.
started looking for the ones that you were talking about, but then I found a bunch that break down World War II.
Oh yeah.
And for if you've never done it before, if you just have any even just a tinge of curiosity, you
Hmm.
should definitely go and watch some of the WW2 breakdown videos that they do.
Hmm.
There is so much information we have about World War II that
Yeah.
all of these things are incredibly detailed. They're
Yeah.
done very well. It's almost like it blurs the line between documentary and movie so well. Like some of them were just great, and then that got me into I ended up going and watching Band of Brothers,
Oh,
and which is a fantastic
I love
fantastic
Band of
series.
Brothers. Oh, it's so
Yeah,
good.
now I had seen it
Hmm.
before in college,
Hmm.
and this is the first time that I'd watched it again since college.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I started watching some videos on YouTube. I was really into it. They started making references to the 101st and everything else, and I was like, yeah, And
Yeah.
then, is it General Winners?
Captain Winners.
Captain
Captain
Winners,
Winners. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
They do it. There's a lot on him on YouTube,
Right.
and I mean, if you want a character who fits that kind of bill of Hollywood hero, I
Yeah.
can't think of a better person. Like
Yeah.
the stuff that he does, it's just shy of legendary.
Yeah.
Seriously, and the fact that it's all like true and like
Yes.
accurate documentation of it, and
Yeah.
also that the man himself, like, because there's so many interviews with him and everything else, he is just so freaking like down to earth and
Yes.
humble, and he's
Yes.
just so earnest.
Right.
There's something about that whole combination that just makes him such a great, like, not just character, but person to
Yeah.
watch and experience. And then go watch Band of Brothers because you're like, they take his story and add that kind of, again, that Hollywood quality to it, because
Yeah.
it's Steven Spielberg and Tom
Yeah.
Hanks and all the rest of them,
Yeah.
and it's great casting, and
Right.
it's such a great thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, I got lost in World War II and Band of Brothers these like
Yeah.
the last like
Oh, I
last
love
week
Band of
really.
Brothers. When I was a
Yeah.
kid, I'm a teenager. Me and my brother, my younger brother, and my dad, like watching Band of Brothers was like growing up, classic stuff. It's fun too because when Band of Brothers came out, it was such a hit that it inspired a lot of like Call of Duty. Like some of the original Call of Duty games based their multiplayer maps on Carentan, for example. Like the Battle of Carentan, there's a map in the game Call of Duty that is based on the Band of Brothers
Oh,
version of that
yeah.
town. So it was fun to like live it when you would play the game.
Yeah.
Um, I actually have the Band of Brothers book. I bought it recently because I want to read it. I think I might have mentioned this recently to you. Maybe I haven't, but they're coming out with a new show. It'll be on Apple TV. It's going to be called Masters of the Air, and it's Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks again. So it's going to be about the guys in the planes, but it's going to have like an
Okay.
episode on the Tuskegee Airmen. So it's not just like the Band of Brothers show focuses on the 101st
Yes.
as they go through it, but this show seems like it's going to focus like a couple episodes here,
Historically
a
on
couple episodes
aviation.
here. Exactly.
Okay.
So I'm
Historically
hoping
on
it's
military aviation.
yeah. So I'm
Okay.
hoping that it's just as good, World War II style. They had the guy who just played Elvis. It was last year. The guy who just played it was in the Elvis movie. I don't know the guy's name, but he's in it. And I'm hoping it's as good because Band of
Well,
Brothers is so high quality that you're
yeah.
like, it's
I
hard to get
mean,
back up there again.
but at the same time, with those two doing it, Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg, I wouldn't be surprised at all
Yeah.
if it's another I mean, just straight hits. Like
Yeah.
seriously, Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks rarely miss. So
Have
I'm
you
just
seen the movie Greyhound? It was made by Tom Hanks and he plays the captain in the movie, but it came out during the pandemic, so it went straight to
is this the
streaming. I
movie where
think it
he's
was
like
he's the
in like
captain on a destroyer in the Atlantic.
no, I didn't see that then. No.
Yeah, he's the captain of a well, there's a convoy of ships going from America to Europe. That's the setting, and they have to give the guys give the ships they're escorting them, and so there are German U-boats that are attacking, and so it's instead of it being like there are a bajillion submarine movies which are great, but never one like this where you're actually in the destroyer, and it's almost pure action. It's not
Okay.
just pure action, but you could go on YouTube and just watch the action scenes because, of course, people have just clipped out the action scenes, and they're fantastic. Makes
Okay.
you really feel like you're there. But like Tom Hanks is killing it because he's the captain, so he's like telling this guy, "Do this, do that, do this, do that," and you're like, "Yeah, go guys, you got it." Yeah, it's a great little movie. Again, it came out during the pandemic, so it kind of got lost amongst everything that happened during that time period. But
I'll have to look it up because I have not seen it. But I love Tom Hanks. I've yet to see a movie of his that I haven't really enjoyed.
yeah,
So yeah, I'll have to check that
he's
out.
a classic. He's an
Yeah,
American treasure right there.
yeah. But we're not here to talk about Tom Hanks' stellar movie
No,
career.
we're
We are
not.
here to talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine and things past. So, to that end, would you like to give the recap of this episode, or do you want me to do it?
I could do it. It's been a while since I've done one, so I'll
I
give
was
it
going
a
to say, yeah,
quick
you
go.
should do it. I think I've done the last like three.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, they were all important episodes, so go
yeah,
for
yeah, I
it.
was really amped up there. So yeah,
Yeah,
but go
and
ahead, fire
not
away.
that this one isn't important, but it doesn't require quite as
True.
much detail.
Hmm.
All right, so guys, things past starts on a runabout. We have four characters. We have Cisco, Dax, Odo, and Garrick coming back from Bajor. They were there to participate in a conference where Odo got recognized for his history with the Bajorans. You know, when the Cardassians were occupying the country, I'm sorry, the planet, they say he was someone who was serving the Cardassians, but his master was justice, as Cisco quotes someone having said. And Garrick had come along to give a Cardassian version of support for the occupation. You know, it's a conference to talk about the occupation. He's there to defend the Cardassian and what they thought they were doing was right. Of course, he was very his presence was very a lot of conflicts apparently surrounded him being there because he was very in favor of the occupation and obviously didn't go down very well. But anyway, um, however, before the runabout gets to the station, it turns out they hit some sort of spatial anomaly and they all go unconscious. And so when they get back to the station, uh, Bashir puts them into the infirmary and they are all unconscious. And while they're unconscious at one point, while things that are going to happen to our other characters, they are basically experiencing some a they're experiencing a group experiencing some events together as they're unconscious, and that'll affect things like Garrick will bleed from his nose when he bleeds while he's unconscious in this dream state. He bleeds from real life, and so him and Worf, are like concerned. Will that mean that he'll like have a some sort of brain aneurysm, for example, because his body will be responding to what he's kind of dreaming. But what's really happening, it turns out that the four of them, again, it's Cisco, Odo, Dax, and Garrick, they have been somehow sent back to the past when Deep Space Nine, the station, was actually Terok Nor during the Cardassian occupation. So they are back about 7 years into the past, and they seem to be all embodying some Bajorans. They are all Bajorans. Now, that to us, they still look like themselves. Garrick still looks like Cardassian, and Odo still looks like Odo. But as far as all the other people around them, they all seem to be acting as if they are all Bajorans. And so, as they try and figure out what's going on, Garrick thinks that, well, maybe I can prove with my knowledge of the station that I'm actually a Cardassian. But when he tries to stand up to a Cardassian, he gets beaten up. And Dax gets taken away to go be Gul Dukat's friend. Hey, I'm lonely in my role as Gul of Terok Nor, and I need someone I can talk to.
I
And so
really
Dax,
can't wait till we get to talking about Picard in this episode. This
yeah,
man,
yeah,
boy. But
yeah.
continue.
And so while Dax is off being Gul Dukat's friend, they get a hold of a device that allows them to figure out who they actually are. And in revealing their identities to each other, Odo knows who he is before his name is read out. Garrick and Cisco learn their names, and then Odo knows who he is based on who the other two are. And then it becomes clear throughout the episode that he knows where they are in time. They're 7 years in the past, but what's strange is that at this time in history, Odo was supposed to have been the one in charge of the like policing actions of the station. He's always called the constable. So he was in charge of security on the station by this point. But when they actually are seeing who's on the station, the previous head of security, Thrax, is actually still on the station and he's still in charge. At one point, all three of these characters, Odo, Cisco, and Garrick, they get sent over to work for Quark, and Thrax, the previous head of security, interrogates Quark. Odo, your predecessor gave Quark just as much trouble as you do. But this reveals a strange truth. Why are they in the past, but in a timeline, or why is the history of these events actually changed from what really happened? It turns out that the three people that our characters are embodying were executed falsely for a attempt on Gul Dukat's life. There was an attempt on Gul Dukat's life, but in order to make an example, they just killed these three random people, even though they weren't the actual ones responsible. And it turns out that Odo knows this because he was the one who actually brought these three men up to Gul Dukat for punishment. Even though he had just become head of security on the station, at that point, he was still more willing to just find someone to blame than he was in actually finding justice. And it turns out that this whole dreamscape we're in is actually happening in Odo's mind. Turns out that Thrax, we think briefly that he's a changeling. It's not that Thrax is a changeling, it's that Thrax is his conscience telling him that what you did when you were head of security on Terok Nor was not always as wonderful as he was praised at that Bajoran conference. So he might have been praised, but it turns out his history as head of security is more checkered than we had previously realized. He had allowed 3 men to be executed, even though they were innocent. And that has been kind of torturing his conscience all this time. And when they hit that spatial anomaly in the runabout, that caused his brain to produce enzymes that allow the changelings to go into the Great Link. The Great Link, of course, being what the changelings do with each other. There were no other changelings around, so what happened is that basically Odo has initiated and unconsciously initiated a Great Link with the other 3 men, and they are all experiencing kind of like a fever dream as his conscience helps him work out his guilt and regret over that event. So they are all able to wake up after Odo realizes what's going on. They're all okay, and Kira, at the very end of the episode, she's still pregnant, she comes to Odo and says, "Was there anyone else that was executed? Anyone who was innocent that you allowed to die on your watch? I need to know if you ever let anyone else die that shouldn't have." And Odo can only say that he's not entirely sure, but that he hopes not. And so we end the episode with Odo, again, we're a little bit remorseful for what happened during his time as chief of security, but otherwise everything goes back to normal. So, that's a lot.
It is a lot.
Good.
And we're gonna, when you hit the finer points there, of course, we are gonna dive into a couple of things. But first, I do want to give 2 quick shout outs. One, since he is in the episode, obviously. Um, Today is Michael Dorn's birthday, so Commander Worf himself
Mm,
is now officially 72 years old. So, and
very
still
nice.
doing the thing. So, if you have not seen Star Trek Picard and you want to see our favorite Klingon all aged up but still swinging his massive Klingon swords around or whatever else, please go watch Star Trek Picard and you'll get to see all that. Also, this episode was directed by none other than Geordie LaForge himself, LeVar Burton.
Woohoo.
So he has once again returned to the director's chair to give us a really great episode. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about, which is a little bit of trivia here, is the runabouts compliment, and this is the first time that we have seen Garrick in a while. In
Mm,
fact, the last time that we saw Garrick was in the 4th season episode Broken Link, which, as you remember, is the episode where he tried to assassinate the founders while they were trying to decide what to do with Worf, or not with Worf, but with Odo. That's
right.
the episode where they turned Odo into a solid, and he was trying to assassinate them, and that's where he attacked Worf and was sentenced to 6 months in prison for trying to sabotage
Mm,
the Defiant and for assaulting Worf. So wait a minute, for almost committing genocide and for assaulting a Starfleet officer, he got 6 months.
yeah. And
Okay,
is allowed on a runabout without escort on a
yeah.
trip to Bajor.
So I only bring it up because this episode, if you follow the timeline, this episode falls just about 6 months after Broken Link. So now this is why Garrick is back, and everybody's just like, "Oh, he's back. He served his time. Come with us to a conference." It's just the quirkiness
Uh,
of Star Trek. It's really is a it's like you can. They have jails, they have prisons, whatever. But truly, once you served your time and you're out, they're playing like, okay, no
yeah.
problems. There's no
No probation.
ex-con, right? And there's no ex-con connotation to anyone's name or anything like that. You're a citizen now,
You're
and go do
rehabilitated.
things. So,
So, yeah,
and so we
that's
see in this
hilarious.
shuttle pod or this runabout, they're all sitting there, and Garrick is talking about how they labeled him Elam Garrick, former Cardassian oppressor. Fantastic! I
Hmm.
absolutely loved it. I was like, yes,
Yeah.
that you should get that
Yeah.
title, you
Right.
know. And then Dax is outraged. It's like you were trying to convince them of the merits of your occupation of their world. Like, what's
Right.
wrong with you?
And it's great because he is so racist in this episode. He is all like,
He
They
really is.
that's their type. That's who they are. That's their place. And it's so funny because even when they go back in time, they don't actually go back in time, obviously, but when they go back in time, um, Thrax makes similar arguments. He says that if the Bajorans would just accept their place in history, we wouldn't have to oppress them.
Right.
Like,
If you could just accept the fact that you're, slaves and cannon fodder, we
right.
could all get along. No
Exactly.
problems, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
This episode, again, it's little things like that. It's like they're little drops in the overall dialogue of the episode that if you don't if you're not looking for them, not paying attention, you do miss them. But it does really show you how these kinds of mindsets really just affect so many things. Like the Cardassians didn't see themselves necessarily as villainous. They thought that it was
Hmm.
just right of them. They had the superior military, the superior technology, they had the superior strength, both again with military technology, but also physically than the
Hmm.
Bajorans. They saw no problem with their occupation and subjugation of these people whatsoever.
Right.
And so yeah, it's just like when they say these things, it's so casual and it's so. But I mean, like that's also our shared history, like we dress it up and we put the people in alien makeup and whatever else, but humans have done the same thing countless times. And that's why I love shows like Star Trek, because it's just like, yeah, take out Cardassian and put almost any other race in there, and you will find history, a pattern of this kind of thing happening. So
Right.
but yeah, Thrax is awful. Garrick is awful. Pretty much all the Cardassians in this episode, no matter where we see them, come off
Yeah.
as pretty awful, pretty
Well, we can move
sleazy.
on to Gold Dukat real easily here.
That
Yeah.
man gets a gold star for his just. He's such a pompous,
Oh,
egomaniacal. Everything about him
yeah.
in this episode, I was so glad when Dax beats him up
Yeah.
and knocks him out. I was like, Jesus, couldn't you have done that 20 minutes ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, listen to this man. The Bajorans are like my children, and
Yeah.
bad manners are the problem of the parents, not the
Yeah.
children.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
It's so condescending, and it's. I mean, it's fun to watch that because it's all fictional. But you have to remember, it's like, wow, there are actually people in history who thought and talked like this for real.
there, yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
there are.
wow.
There are people who thought that, yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that there are still people who think this way about various other races and cultures and so forth. But yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
that whole thought of you all are like children and you're playing these games and you don't understand what you're doing, but I do as the superior, as the adult, and I'm going to show you the real consequences to your actions and things like that, and I'm going to raise you. That's what this is.
Right.
And yeah, but also like, well, in the same breath that Descartes is talking about these things, he's also talking about how he's lonely. He needs a
Hmm.
friend. He
Hmm.
just wants a friend. That's all.
Hmm.
Why doesn't anybody understand that all he needs is a friend?
Hmm.
It was gross.
Oh,
It
it's
was
so
so
gross.
gross.
I know. Especially because we know his history. We know that he fathered a child with a Bajoran woman, and he might call that woman his mistress. But yeah, come on. There's no way that was
And we
any
know,
way consensual.
and there's no way that she was the first or only. He
Yes.
must have done this multiple times.
Right.
I'm convinced that this was not that that woman and Zial were not the first.
Exactly.
Um, she was just
Well,
a,
and well, the way she
yeah.
gets picked out, I forget the exact terminology that was used. You might remember better, but like, what does the guy say when he picks Dax out? He says, "That one can
She's
go,"
been
or something.
selected.
Yeah,
That's
there
what
you
it
go.
says here.
Yeah.
She's been selected.
And we know
Ducat's
that
got
they
his eye
move
on
people
her.
around. They keep people moving around so that they can't ever organize and they're never in the same location. So yeah, it'd be very easy for them to say, yeah, the last girl didn't last long, and now we have a new one in town, and Gold Ducat's got his eye on her because we see Gold Ducat, walking around observing everything.
And I mean,
Um,
if you follow the timeline, this was supposed to be 7 years ago in the past, and
mhm.
we know how old Zial is when we find her in season 4 or whatever. So yeah, she would have been at least the second woman
Right,
that he would
right.
have selected, because Zial would have been already born by this point.
Yeah, his daughter, Zial's the daughter that's on the station now, right? That's one. That's
Right,
her name, and
right.
she's already like 16. So like, yeah, she was already
So the mother would
like,
have already been sent off, the kid would have already been born, all
yes,
that stuff would have already have happened, and here he is trying to pick yet another woman
right,
to, take up with. So
right,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Gul Dukat is, I, it's just really interesting because when we see him now with Kira, and he has that same like he just treats Bajorans and Kieran specifically as if he's kind of owed.
Yes,
He's
he
owed
does. He wants them to not just understand why he does what he does, but he wants them to appreciate and even love him. He
for it.
wants
Yeah.
them to love him for what he does. And that's how he speaks. I've wanted so long to increase the food rations, but
Ugh,
the Bajorans just keep fighting us all the time, and I just
yeah.
can't do it. And I want to help your people so much. My heart is so big. That's what he says.
Right.
My problem is I
Yeah.
love too much. I'm so generous. I'm so
Yes.
just
I'm
like,
too
oh
generous.
my
Yeah.
God, just so.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you're working them to death. You're keeping them in separated camps on the promenade. They can barely eat. They can't earn any money. They can barely clothe themselves. They can't keep warm. They're huddled around barrels of burning whatever. And he's all,
Right.
my problem is I'm too generous. I love too
Yeah.
much. Oh, God.
Yeah. I have to kill innocent people every now and then because I need to make examples of them. Yeah. Yeah.
This is definitely a guy who is the hero of his own story.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Ducat writes fan fiction about himself. Like,
Yeah.
absolutely. He's a guy who writes fan fiction about himself. He is
And
the star.
we did see him at the opening of this season, though, right? Because he was the one who got our team to the Klingon.
To Tiger
Uh,
Corps when they went for the
yeah,
Order of the
because
Batleth. Yes, we do see
right
him there.
now he is in charge of a
A
commandeered
Klingon,
Klingon vessel.
yes, they have
Yeah,
hijacked a Klingon vessel, and they're just patrolling around, blowing up Klingons and anybody else that they choose to attack.
right. Yeah. So it's really funny to see how far he's fallen, and like now he's the rebel now. It's oh, times have changed for Golden God.
But also, I mean, it's also to see like as much as times have changed, his attitude has not. He
Not at
is
all.
still very prideful. He is still very much a believer in his own power and his station and where he should be and
Right.
what he should have. None of that has changed at all.
Right.
If anything, it's made him more dangerous because he's fallen far from that, but he
Right.
still wants to be that. He's still working hard to attain that again. So
Right.
a person like that doesn't learn from his mistakes. A person like that schemes and figures out ways to undercut and be ruthless to get it back again. And
Right.
that's kind of the trajectory that we're seeing of Gold
Hmm.
Ducat here in this episode.
Right. It's also. Oh, sorry. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just saying it's funny to see Garrick respond to Gul Dukat in the past. When he shows up in the past and he sees Gul Dukat, he just hates him. You know, these gulls who are so incompetent and ruin everything, and they're the ones that cause us to like have to leave. He hates Gul Dukat with a passion. There's no love lost between these two, and it's so it at this
So
point, we don't know why exactly what the exact history between them is, and it's just fun to like never know. We're not gonna find out why
right,
they hate each other. It's just
and
part of the mystery.
their differences really seem to be that Garrick, where Garrick stayed kind of in the trenches and doing things and being very hands on as this spy slash spy master, whatever. Ducat seems to have gone the way of the politician, and he's used his tools and techniques when he was working as a spy to work his way into positions of power. And this seems to
Hmm.
be where he and Garrick differ and why they don't like each other because they both recognize each other as threats, but
Right,
they're threats that neither one can really eliminate. As much as they may try, they cannot eliminate each other. And we've
right,
seen them try multiple times. And when they end up having to work together, it's so, just begrudgingly. And when they find little things out about each other they can use to kind of one up what the other one, or even just tease or goad or whatever it is, they enjoy it to no end. And I feel like
Right.
that's what we're seeing here in this episode. He's talking about, he's such an ineffective goal, and the way that he leads and makes people like him, it's disgusting to Garrick, who's used to being this. Again, he's very hands-on, the behind the scenes, working power in a very ruthless, efficient manner. And I think he just feels insulted by the fact that he and Ducat have, up to a certain point, the same background and how
Right.
they diverge. Now, you're right, it's never really discussed. We do kind of get little bits here and there, inferences and whatever else, but it's never flat out said what happened between the two of them that caused this falling out,
Hmm.
or whatever. But yeah, they hate each other, and they continue to hate each other, and it is a lot of fun to
Right.
watch. But mainly because Mark Alimo and Andrew Robinson, they do such a great job as Ducat and Garrick respectively.
Yeah.
And so when you get these great performances from these two individuals, even
Right.
though they're hardly ever in scenes together,
Right.
when it happens, you're just like, man, they're fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a while since we've seen the two of them actually share a scene together. We have seen it before, obviously, but
Hmm.
this one they're only ever at a distance. Um, but yeah, this the I guess I'll just move on to my critique of this episode. The only real problem I have with this episode is I feel like it's like we're in season 5 now, and it feels like this is an episode that we would have actually seen in an earlier season, like say season 2 or
Uh,
3.
so, and there's actually a good reason for that, because this episode was kind of filmed in that same kind of noir esque mode, like um, Necessary Evil, which was one of the episodes that we saw in season two, kind of giving us this backstory. And again, um, that one was done for Kira. Remember when Kira was
Mhm.
suspected of being, an assassin, and
Right.
Oda was investigating her on Terra Nor?
Yeah.
Then,
Right.
it was, yeah, pretty interesting to watch. But now we're kind of back to that. In fact, this episode does parallel that a lot, even with the ending. If you remember, at the ending of Necessary Evil, we saw Kira and Odo in Odo's office, and
Hmm.
having this realization that Kira had been responsible and that she had
Right.
hid this from Odo the whole time. And
Right.
now here we are seeing it again, only this time it's
Right.
Odo who is
That's right.
responsible, and they're
Yes.
having to deal with the repercussions. I love the way that they kind of bookended that with
Right.
showing both of them being, these people who were not
Everything we thought
infallible.
they were. Oh,
Right.
infallible. Right. Yeah. I will say that now that you bring it up, I was a little frustrated with Kira when she showed up again this episode, and she's like, "It's been 3 days, and I need to know if there were any other innocent people." And I'm like, to be fair to her, this is Odo revealing that he hasn't always been honest and upfront about his relationship with the people that he has allowed innocent people to die. But I I feel like she should know him well enough that this revelation, while damaging to his reputation, is still something that can survive. Now, not to say that it doesn't survive this conversation. It does. It's a important conversation. But I feel like the way she walked in and she was like, "I need to know." It just felt a little too sharp. Like I feel like if I had a friendship with someone and something about them was revealed, I would hope that my reaction would be more of a sadness in the sense of
Hmm.
like I'm sad to hear that this happened, that your reputation isn't what I thought it was, but like my approach is more to help like come to understand and rehabilitate my understanding of who you are as opposed to accuse. It just felt a little bit too like she was jumping on him a bit more than I wanted. And I don't, does that make sense? Am I
Yeah, I
thinking
can
about
see.
too much?
Yeah, I can. No, I can see what you're saying there, because of the fact that she is coming to him, and it does almost seem like she's accusatory. Like, did anyone else die? Any innocent people, other innocent people die on your watch? It does sound kind of accusatory, but um, I think the part that, because I thought that as well initially, but what you have to remember is, let's go back to, again, that Necessary Evil episode, and him, Odo, being that person who was just recently put in charge of keeping the peace, right? and everybody has identified him as this outsider who, can get things done and can get answers, and he just kind of seems to be very separate from both the Bajorans and the Cardassians. That's why everybody seems to kind of trust him and wants to uh, work with him.
Right.
And so he builds this reputation on being this person who just only pursues justice. He doesn't
Right.
care who's doing what. He even tells Kira in an episode, that's how this works. You tell me, I see if you're lying. If you're lying, I turn you in. If you're not, you go free. It's justice. I'm not dealing with any of the rest of it. It's just justice. That's it.
Right.
And then to
Right.
find out that in this particular instant here, because we don't know exactly how many years it was that went between the events of necessary evil to the events of things past. We don't know how many years that was, but it seems like a long time of Odo serving in this capacity under the
Right.
Cardassians. And so,
And only 2 years before the Federation shows
right,
up, because if it's only 7 years from now,
right.
so yeah, it was actually much more recent than we might even initially think. But sorry, keep
Yeah.
going.
So I feel like here's this person who, while everybody else is getting dirty and getting roughed up and dying and everything else, here's this one person who seems to have held it together, has held on to
Right.
principle, and has worked through all of this stuff to be this pillar of justice in two
Right.
communities, right?
Right.
Only to find out in the end that, as far as we can tell, he failed. And
Right.
I do feel like she's a little bit harsh because it does seem like the issue here was less about evidence and more about time. Because Odo even points out later on, he says that, the evidence that we had, it didn't come to light until after these individuals were already assassinated and made an example of, that they
Mhm.
were innocent, because another bombing happened a couple of weeks later. So
Right.
it was like we had some stuff, we just didn't have the ability to do everything that we needed to do for this. I was being rushed, I was being pressured, we needed to make an example. All of these things were, compounding the situation. And so ultimately, since we had no one else, and the guys did have enough things to appear guilty, that this
Hmm.
is what happened. And because of who Odo is and
Hmm.
continuing to chase the justice angle, that's when they found out about the other bombing. That's when they found out those guys were innocent, and he's carried that guilt with him ever since.
Right.
So on the one hand, I get it for her because he was that guy who was just, again, that pillar. But on
Right.
the other hand, it's just like, she acknowledges, hey, no one came through the occupation clean, but
Right.
it does feel like at certain level she is blaming him a bit more than she should,
Right.
hitting him with some harsher criticism than she should.
Yeah. It feels. It just felt a little bit too aggressive, as I just want to put it that way. When she first walks in at the end of the episode, it feels a little aggressive. I understand why she's upset and what she's really asking. Do I, do I know you, basically? Because yeah, if he allowed innocent people to die and then allowed his reputation to build up in defiance of his actual character, then that's a problem. So I get it, but I was just a little surprised that. I mean, again, in moments like this, I'm like, well, I'm trying to think. If you're making a show, you only have so much time to tell a story, and so maybe they had to kind of, it's the end scene, so they only had so much time to wrap it up, and this is kind of the bow on top, it's the cherry on top to finish the story. And this is what's important: Odo doesn't 100% know how many people he actually allowed maybe to die without a true fair appeal to justice.
And
That
what a
his
great
reputation is a bit of a false, um, is false in some level. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, and I was just going to say, what a great kind of parallel for our own justice system. And we like to think of our own justice system as blind and truly fair, but how many people have been sitting on death row only to find out their convictions are overturned because new evidence
Yeah.
through time and the advancement of technology and so forth has
Right.
now proven them innocent? We hear those cases a lot of
Hmm.
people who, I mean, unfortunately already served 10, 15, 20, 40 years of
Right.
a sentence only to now be released, and evidence is saying they didn't do it after all.
Right.
That unfortunately does happen a lot, even in our own country. And as much as we like to think that we are getting better and that we have this kind of perfect, justice system or whatever, we have to recognize that there are flaws. And those flaws come in when you have kind of the same issues that Odo had here, when you have people who are pressing more for deadlines and making examples and kind of skirting evidence and not actually investigating everything. That's when those kind of mistakes happen. So
Right.
we would like to think that yes, we get it right, but we know that we don't always.
Yeah.
So I think it's a perfect way that he ended it when he said, I would like to think so. I
Hmm.
hope so.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't say absolutely no one else, because then
Yeah.
there's another episode we're gonna do season 7.
Right.
Odo was wrong, or Odo
Yeah.
lied, or Odo, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
And
just
I want to say that actually, and just to contradict even myself, when I say that I feel like this episode would have happened in season 2 or 3, I do think that in part it would make sense in season 2 or 3. But actually, the finale of him saying it that way actually makes sense as a later season episode. We've had him be this perfect constable for 5 seasons. His reputation is kind of rock solid. And it actually
he
makes more
is.
sense in the middle of the
Mhm.
current storyline. Odo being a solid, his people have rejected him, yada yada, where his identity is really being challenged. And like this is like beyond being a changeling. If I mean he can handle being a solid. We've seen him being a solid for several episodes. But if he lost his reputation, ooh man, Odo would really
It's
lose something there.
Well, it's almost like I said earlier, Odo was almost given this otherworldly status.
Hmm.
And then we see him lose that because, like, when he goes from changeling to solid. And
Hmm.
now to see him, in a sense, brought even lower by saying he's just like any other man, he's any other fallible person. They really made sure to continue to knock him down to this
Hmm.
very I want human relatable level. He makes mistakes. That
Right.
I feel like that is the full fall for Odo. When we
Yes.
first see him and first encounter this truly alien creature, he is not like anybody unless he chooses to be. To
Right.
suddenly watch his evolution of a character arc, to have him now, he is a solid. He is a humanoid. He bleeds, so forth and so on. And
Right.
now he's lost that title that he maintained there of this servant, the true servant of justice. He's infallible, he's impeccable, he's all this, and now even that is gone. It
Right.
truly does make him one of us.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't know if that was necessarily their point here, what they were trying to do, but it
Right.
really nails home the fact that Odo has completely changed. He is
Hmm.
no longer this thing. He is fully, firmly this, and I really do like that for the
Yeah.
overall character development. Um,
Yeah. Well, as I said, when we first started, and I maybe didn't say it this way, but this is what I meant to say at the very least. Gray characters, people in gray situations. There's no black and white. I mean, let's think about Odo. He's trying to offer justice in the middle of the Cardassian occupation. Maybe in order to offer justice to other people, like he didn't really know all the details surrounding this one event. So okay, I'll let these 3 people die, but that allows me to like serve justice elsewhere. But that's why it's so poignant when he is arguing with Thrax again. The he's arguing basically with himself. It turns out Thrax is actually his conscience. He's arguing with himself about what should be done about keeping the 3 of them safe because they're now embodying the 3 guilty men. And again, in Cardassian society, you have to prove your innocence. You don't go to a court to have a trial. You go to court to find out why the sentence you've already been given was given. But he
yeah, the
says
Cardassian way of justice is terrifying.
is exactly backwards from our
Yeah,
own. I mean, literally, if you reverse every single aspect of it. But what he says to Thrax is, "You're supposed to search for the truth. If you actually cared about the truth, then you would keep working. You would question the officers who gave false statements. You would question is the evidence contradictory. If you don't, then you don't care." And Thrax says, I have enough circumstantial evidence to say that you're guilty, and that's all I care about." And
he's like, the burden of proof is on you. It's not on
exactly.
me. Whereas
Yeah.
in our justice system, the burden of proof
The
is on the
prosecution.
state.
Yes.
Yeah, the
Yes.
state must prove.
Yeah. And
So.
it's just great because I love characters when they're I love characters when they're having to confront their darkest self, and that's why I
Yeah.
like an episode like this because Odo is having to confront that darker aspect of his past. Not because he personally did something wrong in the sense of like he actively did something, he was passive. And how often is it that we don't necessarily do something wrong, but that we passively don't do the
You,
right thing?
we allow for something to we allow for the wrong thing to be done. We don't
Yeah,
actively do something wrong, but we
right,
allow for the wrong thing to be done. That's very
exactly.
true.
Yeah,
People, how many times do you just you say not my problem,
right,
or you can see a way that you could fix it, but in your opinion it will require you to give too much of yourself. It
right,
may take too much work, too much effort, and it's just easier to
right,
do the opposite or to do
right,
nothing.
right.
So yeah, again, this episode gives you a lot here to think about,
Right.
especially the way that, like we were saying, the way that Odo pursues and presents justice, and in this
Mhm.
situation, as we were just saying here in our chat um on our show tonight, the way that Odo kind of distributes justice, it's his own version of justice, but it's one of those things that would have definitely required more scrutiny. And it's another thing that we see as the way it differs under Cardassian control versus the Federation's control. We
Mhm.
see Odo many times doing investigations, and how he's with the Federation, he is very free to kind of pursue things at his own pace and his own time and gather
Mhm.
up all the evidence and do what he's got to do. But now we are getting to see him more and more, and this is twice now
Mhm.
under the Cardassian occupation of, they don't care about your investigation, they want the results. And if
Yes.
the results are
Result.
already
Result.
laid out, yeah, and if the results are already laid out right in front of them, it almost is annoying to them that you're still doing extra work. It's like,
Yes.
you've got three people who were covered in the substance, who were there at the time of the bombing and were fingered by the guards who
Security
said that they
guards.
were
Yeah.
there and whatever else. That's more than enough. Why are you
Right.
still looking? You want me to do a bomb analysis? Why? I don't need to do a
Right.
bomb analysis. I got witnesses.
Yeah.
They've got the chemicals on their hands. Why would I do a
Right.
bomb analysis?
Yeah.
Why do you want me to go and look at some other records from off planet, from something that happened 3 weeks? I don't need to. I've got
Right.
everything I need right here. And it's
Right.
annoying to me that you keep suggesting this over
Right.
and over again.
And yeah, anyone who remembers that episode, I think it's the end of season one, right, where O'Brien is
Where
kidnapped to
O'Brien is on,
Cardassia, and we see
yes.
that. Yeah, the whole trial is the whole thing is presented to O'Brien as like, just accept your fate, man. Like,
Yeah, just accept
just
it.
quit
Like we've
quit
got
the
everything that we've
fighting and
yeah, we've got
yeah.
everything that we need. And then they
Even
try to
his
spin
defense
it.
attorney is actually just in on the whole thing, and
Right.
yeah, yeah,
And yeah, I mean, Cardassian justice is terrifying. I mean,
yes.
love your architecture, but your justice system is horrible. I wouldn't want to live there at all, because
Right.
man, it just sounds like, yeah, you don't even necessarily have to do anything wrong, but if enough people believe that you've done something wrong
Hmm.
and they say it enough times, then that is it, you
Right.
know. And yes, the episode was called the Tribunal. That
Hmm.
was the one where Odo, not Odo, I'm sorry,
O'Brien.
O'Brien
Hmm.
was on trial.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, a lot of great points here in this episode. So, how would you rate this episode? This does seem to me be a bit of a bottle episode. It doesn't really depend on anything that came before it or what comes next in
Sure.
the viewing of Deep Space Nine.
Hmm.
So, as that bottle episode, what do you think of this one, first time viewing?
I will say I feel like it does take a little bit of time to get to the point that Odo is the one that's experiencing this, that everything is happening because he's there. I mean, I want to mention there's actually a great moment where they're in the jail cell and Cisco says, Odo, like he turns to Odo and he's like, do you know anything about this? And Odo acts super defensive. By this point, we as the audience are catching on. It's something to do with Odo.
Yeah,
But like Cisco turns to him and he's also and Odo acts defensively, and it just kind of nails home that yeah, Odo's feeling guilty about something, but Cisco
yeah,
isn't trying to make him feel guilty. He's like, no, you're a solution. If we can figure out what's going on, if you can figure out what's going on, then we can get out of the situation. And I really like that moment because when you're guilty, you start acting guilty. When you have your conscience bothering you, you start acting like it. And so Cisco, he's not trying to. accuse Odo of anything, but he gets defensive. So it's a great little moment.
He's very observant of Odo, because if you take in everything that Cisco says throughout the episode, it makes you realize that, I mean, obviously he's participating in everything that's going on, but it also makes you realize he's been watching Odo the whole time. Like,
Right.
think about everything that he says when they're starting to piece together what's going on. He's talking about how, like, you seem uncomfortable, you have been acting strange since we first showed up here,
Mm,
which if you go back and watch when they first showed up, when they were getting, woken up and everything like that, Odo looks around and almost seems to instantly recognize where they are and what's going
right.
on. And he seems almost incapacitated to the point where Garrick and Cisco are assisting him to
Right.
walk, you
Right.
know? Um, and so, yeah, he's just like, you've been basically saying, yeah, you've been weird this whole time. And anytime anybody asks you anything, you become very defensive.
Right.
And that's what he says. I think you know more than you think you do, which
Right.
is a
That's what
very
he
nice way
says.
of saying
Yes. Yes.
we know that you know.
Right.
We're aware. You've done
Right.
enough,
Right.
and the foreshadowing that we see throughout the episode that kind of clues us into that too.
Yeah.
Odo runs into the dead man again, the guy who's all gaunt
Yes.
and got the big phaser burn in his chest.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
later on, when they're cleaning, and the three guys walk by on the promenade, and
Right.
then he's got the blood on his hands, and he freaks out.
Yes. Oh, that was a great
Um,
moment in terms of acting.
yeah,
Renee Auberjonois did a great job at that moment. Oh,
yeah.
I just dropped the spoon. I thought they were all being like the ghosts of the people that were dead. When we saw the ghosts of them, I thought they were causing it to happen. So I guess that brings it up for me. I feel like this episode had some red herrings before the revelation of what was actually going on, like the
Mhm.
ghosts, and then also Cisco reveals that he knows a secret way to contact the resistance. They walk over to this this thing on a table and they flip it
Statue,
over.
yeah,
And Garrick is all like, that's how complex the signal
that's
is,
it,
really.
right. Oh,
Um,
gee, the
yeah,
marvelous underground is doing such a great job. He's so
yeah,
condescending, such a
it really
jerk.
is. Yeah. So my only complaint really is that those feel like red herrings in preparation for what the actual revelation is. And I wish more that we had focused more on like the whole Odo of it all. Like I feel like because that
Mhm.
revelation of his character, um, it'd be nice to kind of sit with that for a little bit. But I don't know how well we could have sat with it without just. I mean, the revelation that he was
Yep.
involved in a basically a murder of some innocent people. Um, is an important revelation. I don't know how well we could have saw with it otherwise. I don't know how you could have taken out those scenes and put something
Yeah.
else in. But part of me felt like that's my complaint. I feel like we had other things
I
happen that don't really matter to the overall episode.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because I believe that what you're talking about is it's because we have two stories here, and it's hard to recognize that that's what we're dealing with is two stories. You have obviously your main point about this being something about Odo and the development of Odo's character here, and dealing with how he is ultimately guilty of sentencing these three people to die. But
Right.
then the other story that is overlaid on this and is a problem is the time travel aspect of it, which they
Right.
keep sort of kind of referring to. Why is Thrax here? If that was
Right.
9 years ago, this is 7 years ago, that should be you, this, that, but it's also the time travel aspect of how this could potentially influence what may happen for them in the future, which is never really um addressed
Hmm.
and solved, but it doesn't need to be because it actually turns out to be a dreamscape.
Right.
So their problem is they were trying to present this story without leaning too hard into those two tropes, the
Right.
dreamscape or the time travel thing, because that's something that Star Trek does a lot of, especially the time travel aspect. So they were trying to move away from that, but it's hard to do this kind of story and talk about the the historical aspect of it without one of those two things. And I really think that they would have done themselves a better service if they had made this kind of a tribunal of sorts episode
Yeah.
in which Odo was on trial, where they went to the conference and we would have gotten to see them at the conference. And here's Odo being, like they were talking about how he was up on a pedestal and everybody's just in awe of him or whatever. But if
Right.
someone had then stepped forward and been like, oh no, he did this and was accusing him, and now we had to watch Odo stand trial for these murders, and
Hmm.
then for it ultimately to come out that he wasn't technically responsible. He didn't actually kill them, but
Right.
the investigation kind of led this, because that would be how we would get him off in
Right.
the end. But I would have loved to see that, because Star Trek does tribunal episodes very well,
Mm.
and Deep Space Nine has done a couple, and they've all been pretty great episodes, except for
Yeah.
that Dax one. We're
They
not going to
usually
talk about
stand
that
out.
Dax one.
Oh yeah, yeah. The
Yeah,
Dax one was definitely
yeah.
interesting. I will, if I were to like edit the episode and keep it just closer to what's going on, maybe what I would have done is emphasize Thrax more. By the way, the actor who plays Thrax is Kurtwood
Kurtwood Smith,
Smith, who
who has a
his
nice famed Star Trek background.
does he?
Yes, he has played the president of the United Federation of Planets. He
Okay.
played the president, as a matter of fact, in the sixth and final movie starring the original series cast, which is called The Undiscovered Country.
Okay.
He does a great job as the president there. He's got a he's white haired. He's got this full on white Fu Manchu thing going. He's a great looking alien.
Okay.
He also plays Anorax in a Star Trek Voyager episode called uh, Year of Hell, and it's a great two-parter episode. And if you haven't seen that, go watch it. It also deals with time travel, so David, right up your alley. If you wanted to go just to see how time travel is done on Voyager, so go
Okay.
watch that. So
Gotcha.
yeah, he has been in Star Trek a bit,
Right.
and it's fun to watch.
Yeah, what I recognize him from, of course, the most is that '70s show. I wasn't a huge fan of that '70s show, and like I watched it regularly, but I feel like it was a pretty iconic show for when it was coming out. And he's the dad of whatever the main character is. I can't remember at the moment, but
Eric Foreman,
um,
but you're right. But
that's it.
also, as I've
Yeah.
just been reminded by a guest in our chat here, he was also the bad guy in the RoboCop movies all the way back.
Yes. Yes.
I forgot all about those, but yes, he
Yeah.
was the bad guy in that movie
That's
as
right.
well.
Yeah.
So
The his face was so clear. Like, even through all the Kardashian makeup, I could make him out. But his voice is really what stands out. He has a
the voice,
very
he's very distinctive.
yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know how to describe it. I guess I would say it's very like it just
menacingly even.
yeah. That's exactly right. Menacingly even. Even. I like the word even in particular. Menacingly even. That's a great yes, man. Fantastic. You read my
You,
mind.
you can have it. You can have that. There you go.
But yeah, he was great. So if I were going back to what I was saying, if I were to edit this episode, what I maybe wish would have happened is that Thrax was acting more suspiciously as what Odo should have done. He turns into the ally of these three men. He's supposed to be the one who accuses them and sends them on their way because, again, in Cardassian uh, uh, society, they
Just
just accuse you and you're guilty, and then you hear your sentence, and then that's it. But what if this Thrax character was suddenly acting out of character? He wasn't acting like a Cardassian. He was acting more like Odo should have acted. Instead of Odo being like the way I'm describing this, Odo wouldn't have had that guilty scene, that moment where he feels guilty and he's
mhm.
yelling at Thrax about what you should be doing. Um, as much as like Thrax would have been acting more just suspiciously. And so maybe my version of the story wouldn't be much better. But I'm just thinking about like how would I maybe have done it. Um, but I guess what I'm also getting at is that as I've experienced many times as we've talked, the episode is more enjoyable because we're talking about it and like working through it. Whereas just a casual viewing, like this was a fine episode.
Yeah,
You know, Garrick is being racist and Cisco is doing this and Dax is beating up Gold Dukat, but really kind of nailing down some of Odo's character
yeah.
complexities is actually a lot of fun to talk about. So this episode is growing on me a bit more as we talk about it, even though I would say it's kind of, as you mentioned, it's just kind of an episode. You don't have to watch it in terms of the overall story,
No,
but it does reveal a lot about Odo, and actually enjoyable. Again, I like stories where gray aspects of characters are revealed. So
And this episode does also contain a little bit of an Easter egg as well, which I was debating whether or not to tell you, because it also kind of spoils some things. So, spoiler slash Easter egg. Should
okay.
I? Should I? Shouldn't I? I don't know.
I mean, you
Um,
tell me if you want me to be coming fresh every time.
mm,
You tell
yeah.
me.
Okay. You know what? Not gonna. I'm gonna save it.
Okay.
When the thing happens, I'll remember, and then we'll go back and have this conversation. So yeah, I'll save that one. I'll save that
Okay.
one. But
Very
it's a
good.
nice one.
Yes.
But yeah, I think I think this is a great episode. It's one of those that I do remember watching the first time, and I don't think I really understood it. And then as I got older and have watched the show a few times, it made more sense, and it
Hmm.
does enhance my love of the character of Oda, because he is this, this outsider, and then to watch him become such a relatable, such a personable character that is struggling just like the rest of us are, and he's got this very important job that he is really, trying to work his way through. Again, it just makes him very relatable. And I really enjoy when Star Trek takes the time to do that. It's something
Hmm.
that I feel like is missing in some of the newer shows, because there's always such a rush, which again, I'm going to blame on the fact that now all the seasons are like 10 episode seasons. There's just not time,
Hmm.
and some characters who could really do with more time to develop and be
Hmm.
seen kind of in the background of other people's stories and like that.
Right.
It's just missing
Right.
now. So and when they thrust a character front and center, they really have to give it everything, because there's a good possibility that the chance to come back to that character may not be for 3 or 4 seasons, because
Yeah.
they are only 10 episodes that season. So
Right.
um that really sucks. But yeah, I think that's where Star Trek really excels, is when they give us these very personal stories that are on this kind of sci-fi landscape. And that's why I enjoy just sci-fi in general so much.
Right.
And so
Mhm.
many shows have really, taken that and run with it. Ronald Moore was a writer, director, and developer on Star Trek. He wrote this story as well, and then we see that carried forward on shows like Battlestar Galactica, The Expanse. Um, just you name any sci-fi show that's come out probably within the last 25 to 30 years, really, and you will see elements of this, because they've all been influenced by it. So it's just like I really like that. Um, that they can do that, and it is sad that we don't really see that anymore
Mhm.
in Trek. It's weird that other shows have taken that from Trek and they all do it, and Star
Right.
Trek, who kind of pioneered it, it's like, nah, we're not gonna do that anymore. And yeah, it is weird that we don't really do that. They don't do bottle episodes anymore, and it is, to me, it's funny that we used to complain about bottle episodes, and now it's the main complaint in the new shows. Oh well, I feel like we didn't get to know that character before they got their own promotion or their own ship, or they died or whatever. And it's like, that would have happened in a bottle episode, you dink. But you you complain now they don't do them
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. And
So
you might remember Perry, 'cause, I mean, again, it was when we first started. But one of the things I said is I actually want I want episodes that focus on characters because I do
yeah,
feel they're so important. And yeah, again, my only, I guess, again, just kind of sounding out maybe what I would do differently. I kind of wish that maybe we could have sat more with this Odo, who is Odo, more, as opposed to just it being revealed and then the episode just having to kind of end with Kira,
is
questioning him. Maybe sit with it for a bit more.
is
But
this yet
I don't know. Maybe
another? Would
next
you
episode we'll do that. Sorry.
Was this yet another one of those that you feel is an episode that where we say this could have been a two-parter? Because we've done that before, broken down some episodes and realized they probably could have done with a bit more time to tell their tale.
I wouldn't say this is a two-parter in the sense of like literally part one, part two, but I would certainly want to. I want to see follow up to this idea that Odo, maybe he has to go back through some old cases and like really try and work
Okay.
out some of the details. Really, like Kim and Kira have to, examine his history a little bit. I'd be okay with
Okay.
that, but a full-on two-parter, I do not think is necessary. No.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we will be getting more of Odo and Kira and the rest of them as the episodes progress. Next week's episode is The Ascent. That one will be featuring Odo and Quark. We got to see a little bit of Quark tonight. We'll get to see a lot more of him next week. So look forward to that. Again, it will be another bottle episode. It's not an episode that has to do with the overarching plot of Deep Space Nine, but it's still this one was, I would say, is an entertaining one to
Right.
say the least. But before we go, I do want to let people know that, as I said last week, the SAG after strike is over, so a lot of shows are going back into production. There has been the announcement that the final season of Discovery will be out in April of 2024. So if you've been paying attention and waiting for that, there you go. You can catch some early previews and promos online already. There's an extended cut from one of the episodes as well, which you
Hmm.
can watch. And um, yeah, go ahead and check all that stuff out. Strange New Worlds, I think they officially started production on the next season this week. Prodigy has officially moved to Netflix, and the new season for that show is also supposed to be dropping in April, but it'll be exclusive to Netflix. You'll be able to find it anywhere else. I don't know why they're doing that. I mean, all the other Trek is on Paramount. Why they won't put this one on there as well? Don't don't know.
Right.
Um, but yeah, also, since we are getting close to the holidays, if you are interested at all, the site Star Trek Spirits, where I had ordered some Canar and some Romulan ale and also
Mm.
from, they are currently running a special. It's called the Armada Special, where you can get one of the wines or what spirits basically
Mhm.
that they make for one of the founding members of the Federation. You can get Andorian ale, the Federation wine, and a couple of them in this package deal if you're
Nice.
interested in that. And
Like
then
a taster, like a.
no, they're full on bottles of each one,
Oh,
but you can order it, and they have the special going on right now. So that if you order it now, your package should come to you before Christmas, or depending on when you order it, before the New Year. So
right.
that's kind of their big push: get it before Christmas, get it before the New Year, that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
Also, if you're interested in just kind of trekifying any kind of glass or whatever you drink out of, they are also selling rounded United Federation of Planets medallions that have adhesive on them, so you can fix them to any glass. So like I've got my curved glass here, just as a quick example. I don't have one, but I'm going to get one, and so
Mm.
it's metal and it will curve and fit pretty much to any glass. They've got
Wow.
it on their site right now that shows you how you can affix it to any glass. So
Nice.
go and take a look at that. I think they're running at like $15. They did have a lot of them in stock, but I imagine though, because it is metal, I imagine those are going to go pretty quickly. So go check that out. Again, the name of that site is StarTrekWines.com. All of these things can be found in their accessories and collectibles section. No, we are not in any way paid or endorsed by them. I just find their site really, really cool. And I like the wine stuff that they've got on there. And I've tried a couple. Again, I've had the Romulan Ale, I've had the Canar. I'm going to get blood wine next.
Hmm.
I'm just letting you know that the stuff is there. And if you're interested, now is the time to get it because they do have these sales going on for the holiday. So if you want it for
Gotcha.
yourself, if you have a Star Trek friend who really likes Trek and you think that would be a cool gift for them, go ahead and get those things. All right. So go take a look. But in the meantime, guys, you can find us and follow us anywhere you happen to do your podcast or listen to podcasts. I happen to do it on Spotify. And of course, check us out on YouTube. You can find our YouTube channel by searching our name, The Fire
Right.
Caves, and watch us. Let us know what you think. But until next week, guys, take care of yourselves.
Thanks, guys.